Today I'd like to continue our journey through chapter 16 of the Gospel of Matthew. We've been talking about Peter's acknowledgement of Jesus. When Peter says that he is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and Jesus says, well, flesh and blood have not revealed this to you, but my heavenly Father. So Jesus acknowledges that Peter has received this inspiration, this revelation, this insight, not from his human understanding. But as we see sometimes in life, we feel this special inspiration from God. So Jesus, now in verse 18 of chapter 16, is going to build on this. And he says, "And I say to you, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of the netherworld shall not prevail against it." So Jesus is acknowledging the special qualities that Simon, now Peter, has. The word kepa is an Aramaic word for rock. And when we translate it transliterated into Greek, it is kephas. Peter is called this in the Pauline letters, 1 Corinthians, Galatians. So we see this sense of the specialness of Simon, now Peter. He has acknowledged who Jesus is, and so Jesus is going to change his name. Interesting, of course, this takes place in Caesarea Philippi, which was known for worship of the emperor. It has a sanctuary to the god Pan with a large rock-faced cliff with carved niches that held statues. So this was a very well-known area for the worship of the emperor. And the idea that this confession of Jesus and Jesus' specialness, Jesus as the Son of God, Jesus as the Christ, that this would take place in this town, of course, has special significance. You come to this town to worship the emperor. Well, Peter is saying there's someone here who is totally beyond any emperor. The emperors come, the emperors go, but what happens with Jesus is forever. This is a radical inbreaking into human history of a special, amazing sort, where Jesus totally transforms history by bringing the divine right into the human. So you can come to Caesarea Philippi, and you can worship the emperor, and you can go to this big rock, but what are you left with? You've acknowledged that the emperor is great, the emperor is wonderful. Of course, the emperor has all this power, and so you have certainly acknowledged that. But what are you left with? Peter is saying something very different here. If you want a deeper relationship with God, if you want to know the Christ, if you want to know the Messiah, well, here he is. He's right in our midst. He's come to us. And of course, Jesus is talking about establishing now a very special kingdom. Upon this rock of Peter, not the rock of Caesarea Philippi, not the rock of the emperor, but the rock is put in very interesting terms as human beings called by Jesus to follow God more completely. And like Peter, to confess that Jesus is the Christ, that he is the Son of the living God. So as we confess this, as we share this, we are in tune with Peter, and we are transcending this rock of the emperor. We have a different rock. It's the rock of human relationship. The idea that Peter, as a human being, could acknowledge God in our midst. And so to really have the rock is to have that relationship with Jesus. And this term that Jesus uses, he says, upon this rock of relationships, this rock of Peter, this rock of faith, really, he's going to build his church. And Jesus is going to start something here with Peter, something we call a church. And we see this word that is used, ecclesia. And this word occurs in the Gospels, only here in Matthew 16:18, and in Matthew 18:17, word is used twice. So this word is a special word in Matthew, reserved for this movement of Jesus, this movement now into a deeper relationship, this movement now into a group that will carry the message of Jesus, the gospel, the good news. It will carry that message now to other people. So it's not the idea of just keeping it to oneself, but of sharing this with other people. And then Jesus says, the gates of the netherworld shall not prevail against it. What does he mean? What's this netherworld? What are these gates? The netherworld, of course, that he's referring to here is the Greek concept of Hades. Hades was the abode of the dead. We also see a similar concept in the Hebrew scriptures in terms of Sheol, this place of the dead where when you die, you go here. It's conceived of really as what? As kind of a walled city whose gates will not close in upon the church of Jesus. He says, the gates of this netherworld shall not prevail against this message that Jesus is sharing with the rock, with human beings, with Peter and the other apostles. So Jesus is building something here. He is building an ecclesia, a community, a church, those who are called to follow Jesus in a deeper way. And he says the gates of this netherworld shall not prevail against the ecclesia, shall not prevail against what is established on this rock, as Peter. So the power of evil, which is present in the world, the power of death, the power of deception, the power of lying, all of these are present in the world. But they will not be able to overcome the church, the ecclesia, that is founded on the rock of faith, the rock of relationship, the rock of closeness to Jesus. And this netherworld, this abode of the dead, which tries to take all of those who have lived and put them in another place, this netherworld, it's not going to be able to prevail against the church. It might seem like it does. It might seem like the power of evil, the power of deception, the power that is embodied in sin. It might seem like this power is going to be overcome in the church, the rock, the ecclesia. But Jesus says, no, that is not going to happen. The Christian scriptures has no other passage in which the change of name is explained. At this point, is coming from Jesus himself. So we have seen name changes in the scriptures, but in this particular incident, it is explained, and it is explained as coming from Jesus. So what is this church? What is this ecclesia? What is this movement all about? Well, Jesus puts it clearly, it's about faith. Peter has confessed his faith in Jesus. That is why he is the rock. So to be a church, to be part of the ecclesia, to be part of those who are called forth, you must demonstrate a faith, a trust in Jesus, a belief in Jesus. Peter has responded in faith. Peter has made an act of faith. So to be an ecclesia, to be part of the ecclesia, the question comes down to, what do we believe? Do we accept Jesus as the Son of the living God? Do we accept Jesus as the Messiah? Do we accept Jesus as the person whom we want to follow and trust? What is our faith? In whom do we believe? Who do we want to follow?